Welcome. Today we have a very special event. We actually have Liz Wagner here in person on our balcony in Clearwater, Florida. And we've never done this before, but we're using two separate computers. So hopefully there'll be no echo. And let us know if there are any technical problems. We're going to be talking again about issues facing the American Jewish community today. As I said before, Liz Wagner is a longtime Jewish activist and I guess still a feminist activist, has been active in a lot of organizations over the years. And for purposes of privacy and not to get any organization involved, that's all we'll say. We're not going to say where she's worked or what she's done, but she's speaking only for herself and not for any organization. But we're very glad to have her talk about today's latest developments or recent developments. And so the topic for today we're starting with, and may move on to some other things, is a statement that was issued by, I think, 10 Jewish organizations, Broad Coalition of Mainstream Jewish Organizations, release April 15th, 2025. And it's the Jewish Council for Public Affairs, Religious Action Center of Reform Judaism, National Council of Jewish Women, American Conference of Cantors, Central Conference of American Rabbis, Pious Rabbinical Assembly, Reconstructing Judaism, Reconstructionist Rabbinical Association, and the Union for Reform Judaism. And they released a statement which has caused some waves in the American Jewish community. And I will note before we discuss it, it struck me as interesting that although these are liberal Jewish denominations generally, I didn't see the ADL listed, which is one of the main go-to places on anti-Semitism. And it's very surprising to see something speaking in the name of the Jewish community without the ADL. Although I'm very delighted the ADL didn't sign on to it, at least not as of the time I printed it out. But anyway, the statement is about anti-Semitism and what's going on. And it had an interesting passage I'm just going to read and then ask Liz to respond to. Quote, "In recent weeks, escalating federal actions have used the guise of fighting anti-Semitism to justify stripping students of due process rights when they face arrest and/or deportation, as well as to threaten billions in academic research and education funding. Students have been arrested at home and on the street with no transparency as to why they're being held or deported, and in certain cases with the implication that they are being punished for their constitutionally protected speech. Universities have an obligation to protect Jewish students, and the federal government has an important role to play in that effort. However, sweeping draconian funding cuts will weaken the free academic inquiry that strengthens democracy and society rather than productively counter anti-Semitism on campus. These actions do not make Jews or any community safer, rather they only make us less safe, and less is emphasized. We reject any policies or actions that foment or take advantage of anti-Semitism and pit communities against one another, and we unequivocally condemn the exploitation of our community's real concerns about anti-Semitism to undermine democratic norms and rights, including the rule of law, the right to due process, and/or the freedoms of speech, press, and peaceful protest." And that's the excerpt that I'm going to read. I just want to ask Liz, as someone active in Jewish affairs for many years now, how do you respond to that?
Well, it's kind of hard to know where to start, but they're trying to argue. I mean, here's finally an administration who's taking serious steps to protect Jewish students whose rights have been infringed for years now by anti-Israel and anti-Jewish activism. And instead of coming out with a major statement thanking and celebrating the fact that there's an administration in power now who's taking seriously the severe discrimination Jewish students, Israeli students are facing on American college campuses. They come out with this statement that says, well, it was nice, but we need to be more worried about the fact that they may be infringing the rights of these Hamas supporting students. Now, the one student that we're really talking about is the Columbia student, Mahmoud Khalil, who they want to deport. Now, the guy engaged clearly in illegal activity. He was inciting to violence, and he was part of the students who took over Hamilton Hall violently. A Columbia employee, a maintenance worker, I believe, was held hostage there for a while. He was injured because he was assaulted. So I'm like, what are these Jewish organizations and leaders thinking? Their statement just appears completely constructed in a way to support the left-wing politics that's hostile to Jews and Israel. I just have to wonder, what planet are these people living on? Do they not understand the Jewish people is facing an existential crisis? It's happening to us, not to other people. It's us they're coming after. So why are you splitting the difference on these policies? Yes, we should be concerned if they come out and abridge people's rights, but this guy clearly engaged in illegal activity. So why are you coming out with such a statement as this, which does nothing except for whitewash the campaign against Israel and therefore all Jews? It doesn't make sense. This is why so many Jews have so many problems, are so upset with the Jewish leaders and Jewish organizations today. They are just completely failing us, and they don't know what to do because they don't have their eye on the ball. All they seem to be able to think about is, well, how do we reserve a place at the table with the left? That seems to be all they're concerned about.
All right. Well, thank you. I think it's very interesting that you say that, because this issue of the left, this document, which I've read a couple of times, it doesn't actually have any specific examples or evidence for the claims that are being made, mere assertions. And there's a lot of loaded language, and it's actually, there's no reference I know of in it to the Torah or the Talmud or Jewish traditions or American Jewish history or Israeli history or anything. And it's interesting that this is Holocaust Memorial Day today, and behavior that most people would see is similar to that of the Nazi brown shirts on college campuses is being defended de facto by the Jewish leaders. And strangely enough, they make wild claims that the attack on the Jewish community in Pittsburgh, the Tree of Life, is being mainstreamed by too many political leaders. I mean, who exactly? What political leader has praised that? You know, not President Trump. He rushed to the synagogue and met with the rabbi who endorsed him. So what kind of dishonest and malicious, false, defamatory propaganda is being pumped out here? In addition, it's not a criminal matter to deport people. You don't actually have to be guilty of a crime. You just have to be undesirable. You're not going to be killed. You're not going to be jailed. You're not going to be fined. You're simply going to be returned to your country of origin. And you're simply saying, listen, we don't want you here anymore because you are engaging in undesirable behaviors. That's it. Does the Jewish leadership desire these behaviors? Does the Jewish leadership in America now consider it desirable for Jews to be spat on and beaten and taken hostage and harassed and threatened and assaulted on college campuses? Is that their idea of desirable behavior? If so, I think someone needs to demand they explain themselves. All these organizations are now complicit with Hamas and their supporters. And you have to ask why, as you said. Now, we can suggest some possible explanations. You mentioned the left. One answer would be, well, the left has long been anti-Zionist, and some say anti-Semitic. There was a famous Soviet anti-Zionist policy in the 1970s. Stalin also engaged in purges of Jews at various times in Russian history prior. Is it just part of being in the left that Israel is seen as a competitor to leftism and so has to be fought? That's one explanation. Another explanation is specifically the mention of cutting funds to colleges. I mean, I would think if you had a segregation academy that was driving out Black students, you wouldn't want the federal government to keep funding it. Yet somehow these Jewish organizations have no problem with funding colleges that are having anti-Jewish actions, hostile environment that they're so concerned with. That I used to teach in universities for many years, and if you had to be very careful. I was an adjunct, but if you were to say to a female student, "Hey, that's a nice dress you have on today," she could bring all sorts of sexual harassment charges against you. You could lose your job. You'd certainly never be asked to teach again. So, yet you can say death to the Jews, flash strobe lights in them, spit on them, beat them, and that's okay with these Jewish leaders. It's mind-boggling. But the other dimension is, and we were going to talk about this, people must realize that for many years, the Ivy League schools have been reducing the percentage of Jewish students in their class. Apparently, it's gone down from about 25% in the year 2000 to 5% today.
Only 5% of Jewish applicants are accepted to Ivy League schools. Is that what you're saying?
No, only 5% of the student body is Jewish.
Okay.
At Harvard. This is the specific Harvard study. But my guess is it's, comparable to the more elite schools. And this is significant because many corporate recruiters, such as McKinsey, or top law schools, or top medical schools, or professional schools, or other organizations, they'll only hire people from the Ivy League schools. They won't even bother to look at the resume if it's from somewhere else. Well, so if you don't get into these Ivy League schools, you may not have a stellar career. You might be able to work, but you're not going to have a stellar career. So how much of this is actually not principle, but a desire to remain in the good graces of Ivy League colleges and universities so that you will not be one of those bad Jews who supports Israel, but a good Jew who supports Hamas? And I'm not one of them. I'm with you, and you can take me to Harvard, and you can give me the fellowship, and you can give me the degree, and I can go to medical school, or I can go to McKinsey, or whatever. And you have to ask, are the priorities here careerist and selfish, and willing to jettison and sacrifice the rest of American Jews for their own advancement? And I'll just wrap this up. It reminds me, I made a film many years ago called Who Shall Live and Who Shall Die about the Second World War. And in it, Peter Bergson, Hillel Cook was his real name, he organized all sorts of efforts to save European Jewry, got into big fights with Reform Jewish leaders claiming to be Zionists like Rabbi Wise. But what he said on camera was, in order to get into the Harvard Club, American Jews were willing to let 10,000 Jews a day in Europe be killed. And I would just update that to say, from this document, it seems pretty clear that in order to get in the Harvard Club, American Jewish leaders are willing to let 10,000 Jewish students a day be harassed, beaten, spit upon, discriminated against, and terrorized on Ivy League campuses in the United States today.
Wow. I mean, it's true. And what it just blows my mind. How can we have this happening again after, Peter Bergson and the heroic work that he did trying to save Jews in Europe during World War II? We know the mistakes that were made at that time because of the work of Peter Bergson. And it should have been lessons learned. So for Jewish organizations to now be repeating this kind of thing again, because, I don't know what exactly is motivating them. Is it, careerist? Is it political calculations? Is it, personal access to power of the leaders of these organizations? Like they said, with Rabbi Stephen Wise, he had access to FDR. And a lot of historians, or there are historians who say, look, he didn't want to compromise his access to the president. And that is why he just continually made excuses for why FDR was not doing anything to help save Jews in Europe. And so this is the frustration, and I just find it just so frustrating. We are at such a crisis point at this point that I cannot understand why Jewish leaders and Jewish organizations continue to seemingly just follow the leftist political line. That's what it seems like to me. I mean, and I came from the left, believe me, it's hard for me to find myself where I am today, but the Jewish leadership, the Jewish community upholding these leftist politics, to me, they're not thinking. I don't know what they're doing. I just feel like something must be done. People must wake up. We cannot just continue sleepwalking, trying to keep our place on the left. We must do more to push back. And if it means working with people on the right, if it means, yes, supporting efforts by the Trump administration, who at this point, these are the only people who have taken seriously the plight of Jewish students. Yes, I support their efforts. Am I concerned that, sometimes people on the right do go to extremes, and does it bother me that there are some cases now of some immigrants who got swept up and shouldn't have been? Yes, I'm absolutely concerned about that. But Muhammad Khalil, this Columbia student, I don't have any problem with him. Get rid of him. He broke the law. Why is anybody defending him? Certainly from the Jewish community, but any American. Why would any American be concerned that a grad student, I understand he had already completed his degree. What was he even doing on that campus anyway at that point? Leading demonstrations that were inciting hatred and violence against Jews, and by the way, inciting ultimately revolution in the United States, because that's, that's the ultimate goal, is to get everybody all riled up with hating Israel and hating Jews and saying, see, you got to you got to take over the country because, these people are horrible, and we're here, we're the Palestinians, and we're all going to save you. We're going to save America. I mean, and this is what these Jewish organizations are actually trying to ally with, defend. It's insane. It's insane, and somebody has to say something. I don't know what it's going to take to change these people's minds, to get them to behave differently. But, I'm trying, I'm willing to put myself out there and say, this is bullshit, what's going on in the Jewish community in America today. It is just bullshit. It's
All
got to
right.
stop.
On that note, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about the left. One of the interesting things about the left, as you said, the unthinking, it's called party discipline. When you follow the party line, no matter where it goes, that shows you're a disciplined party member. And we were talking earlier before this started about people like Pete Seeger, who were of the left. Whether or not he was a party member is still in dispute by some, but he certainly was a fellow traveler at a minimum. And he was very isolationist. Wanted to keep the United States out of World War II during the Hitler-Stalin Pact, or the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact, when Germany and Russia were allies and actually split Poland between them. And suddenly, he actually recorded songs saying, FDR, stay out of the war. Once Russia was attacked, he clearly got a phone call, or as they say, he got the memo, and he started making new songs that were calling for America to join the fight against Germany. So we can see this pattern repeating. Clearly, some of these organizations have gotten a memo from somebody telling them to do this, and they're doing it. Now, who is behind this is a good question. Is it leftist billionaires who are supporting these organizations? I don't know. We do know that Amy Spitalnik, who organized this for the Jewish Council on Public Affairs, reportedly, she has a long history of working for both Democratic Party and leftist organizations, including J Street, the Human Rights First, which previously I believe was called the Human Rights Campaign, and then various other Democratic politicians, which again is strange because it's true, J Street was a Jewish organization, but she's not even a rabbi. I'm sure you could have found plenty of leftist rabbis to take the job, but she's obviously a political operative. And then this is written more like a political document than a religious document. So you have to ask, did the DNC put this out? Did this come out of Chuck Schumer's office? Did it come out of Jamie Raskin's office? Did it come out of Jerry Nadler's office? Did it come out of Bernie Sanders' office? You have to look at the number of Jewish politicians in the Democratic Party who seem to be encouraging persecution of Jews on American college campuses. And you have to ask at what point American Jews will say, wait a minute, it's no longer in my self-interest to support the Democratic Party. And then in the end, these other organizations that are listed here, including HIAS, the Central Council of American Rabbis, the Union for Reform Judaism, the American Conference of Cantors, the Rabbinical Assembly, etc. At what point will their membership say, wait a minute, I can't support an organization that sides with Hamas over America and American Jews? I mean, how do you see this developing? Do you see, since you're active in Jewish affairs, that some American Jews will start to question these organizations? Or do you think their loyalty is a party loyalty? They'll follow the party line wherever it goes, whether it's to the Gulag, whether it's to Auschwitz, or wherever?
Well, I'm glad you asked that question, because I think this is the big problem we are faced with in the Jewish community today. Jews were very comfortable on the left in the Democratic Party for a long time, and but over the years, it's become obvious that there is a hostility to Israel and Jews, and the national leadership has not responded effectively to that hostility. And what's happening is, I believe, like if you're within a local Jewish community, and you're trying to figure out, like, how do we navigate this very difficult moment in history? A difficult moment for Jews, for America, for the world. And so you look to national leaders and organizations thinking that they're gonna, be able to lead. That's what they're there for. But instead of getting well thought out leadership and direction, we're getting what seems like nonsense, like a statement like this from 10 leading national organizations from the Jewish community that seems so misguided and so off the mark, that we don't have any leadership. That is what the problem is on the ground for the Jewish people, to me, in my view, is that we don't have national leadership. So we're left here at the grassroots trying to figure out, what can we do if our leaders aren't leading? I don't know. All I know I can do is try and speak out. And maybe other people agree with me that, hey, there's something really wrong going on here. We can't just keep operating like this, hoping that if we show what great and loyal members of the left coalition we are, they'll just decide, those Jews, what a great bunch of people they are, and we should really stick with them. No, that's not going to happen. They've already stabbed us in the back, okay? And now we have to figure out what we're going to do. The answer is definitely not continuing on trying to stay in these people's good graces. We're not in their good graces. They've already showed us that they are against us. They're against Israel, and they are against us. They use us. They like getting checks from Jews. They like us defending their political positions as long as it works for them. But the minute the Jews really need something, no, forget it. And it is time for all Jews at the grassroots level and Jews at the national leadership level, to face up to this. We have to figure out a way to deal with it. And just going along, trying to make those people on the left like us, ain't working. It hasn't worked for a very long time.
Well, let me ask you a question. A document like this, everybody on it signed it, but to what extent, you work in Jewish organizations, do you think they consulted their constituents? I mean, did the Rabbinical Assembly poll all the rabbis or have some Zoom meeting with all the rabbis? Did the Conference of Cantors talk to every cantor? Did the Union for Reform Judaism talk to every member of every synagogue and, presidents of the, in other words, what type of feedback and input was there from the membership of these organizations before the leadership issued their statements? You've been inside these, or how do you think this came about?
Well, I mean, it's not like I don't want to oversell myself. It's not like I have that kind of history, but I can speak from the experience I do have. And no, I don't think that they, check in with every local federation or every local organization to get their input, every synagogue. No, it's like the way it is, the way things work. There's national organizations, there's the people who are active in them, who have power, influence, maybe a lot of money, who get to be in on those discussions, and they're making the decisions. And during normal times, maybe that's good enough and it works, but we are not living in normal times. And it feels as if now there's such a big disconnect, so that we've got these, you know, uh, a lot of these Jewish organizations, which are very liberal in their politics, are pulling all the rest of the Jewish community to follow them down this road to ruin. And that's what has to be stopped. That's why Jews at every level must start talking about the fact that we are in a very bad situation now, and continuing to do what we have done all these years will not fix it. It's making it worse.
I have a question. You just said you don't think they consult with the membership. If that's true, if it's just a few insiders who put out these statements without any process, without due process, even you could say, to what extent are these statements representative at all of the American Jewish community?
Well, that's a good question. I don't know. I mean, like I say, I'm just saying from my experience. I mean, I have no idea whether if the Jewish Federation, did they sign on to that statement? If they
No.
Okay, so they didn't. Okay, so they weren't consulted. I don't know who they're consulting with. I don't know who they're consulting with.
I mean, as I said, I noticed the ADL, the Anti-Defamation League, didn't sign up, and of course, the Orthodox Union didn't sign on, so it's not all Jewish organizations, but the question
Like 10
still
big ones, yeah.
10 big ones, and mainstream, and I think Reform is now the largest denomination, and
Yeah.
Conservatives the second largest, and yet one would guess that even in Reform congregations, there are probably many members who are not happy about supporting Hamas. I would call him agitator, but whatever you want to call him, clearly a professional political operative
Well, of
in
course,
support of a terrorist organization.
well, of course, they're going to say to you, "We're not supporting him." You know, we don't support Hamas, but the way they're trying to navigate the politics, they end up, instead of really coming out and fighting for the Jewish community, all they're doing is trying to find ways to keep a place at the table for the Jewish community. It's as if these big national organizations are willing to sacrifice Jews, like you said earlier, sacrifice the Jewish students, their educations. They're willing to sacrifice them in order to say, yeah, but we've got a place at the table with the left. Meanwhile, they're stabbing us in the back. And by the way, if they really get their way with Israel, that's not going to be good for any Jew anywhere.
Right. Well,
and forget about Jews. Also, let me just add, it'll be bad enough for Jews, but it won't be good for any Western countries, democracies, if these kinds of people, totalitarians, people who don't believe in democracy, get their way. And that's who's behind that.
Well, these same people are chanting death to Israel, are chanting death to America. They're not hiding it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
they're not. And so, yeah, well, one would.
And I don't think the chant death to America is compatible with peaceful, constitutional change of administration. It
Right.
seems to have violence built into it.
And yet somehow these Jewish organizations can still convince themselves, well, we need to defend those people's rights. Why are they doing that?
Many campuses, I say this again as someone who taught, have all sorts of hostile environment rules. And if they find that, say, let's say some student was catcalling girls walking across the quad, they could actually bring charges against him, and then they could ban this student from campus. Many students and professors have been banned from campuses as a making it unsafe. Making people feel unsafe. Now, on its face, if people say death to you, they must be intending to make you feel unsafe. Yet all this talk about safe spaces and hostile environments, nobody seems to want to enforce those rules against the Hamas supporters. Why do you think that is?
Well, because they've all been co-opted by the political left. They're all products of these universities that were co-opted by and taken over by the political left. So they are now defending the latest, leftist cause, which, even though it is a murderous anti-Jewish cause, it has never been anything other than that. But that is the way of leftist politics, that it is able to twist things around so unbelievably that you could turn Jews into the oppressors, right? For having a little sliver of our indigenous territory, 25% of what was left of what the Jews were supposed to get in 1948. No, somehow it's the Arabs who are the victims, those 400 million Arabs living on, I don't know, tens of millions of square miles of territory.
Well, to be fair,
they've been colonized by Jews, right?
To be fair, some of the Arab states actually have banned the Muslim Brotherhood, which
Yes.
the United States has not done. So in fact, you could say some Arab states are nicer to the Jews right now than the United States. Let me ask one more question. There was this point made in the statement about funding for these universities, and they didn't want it to be held hostage for this stopping these Hamas riots. It's sort of the same argument with the hostages. The Israelis say, just release the hostages and the war is over. But the left says, no, Israel must surrender to get back the hostages. But Israel goes, well, we were at peace with you. We actually had a truce when you came and took the hostages. So you committed an act of aggression. The other side rejects that. They say, no, we're entitled to have this act of aggression against you because you're colonial settlers and occupiers of our land. So anything we do is okay. And the Israelis respond as you do, well, hey, wait a minute. This land is indigenous to us as documented in the Bible, among other things. And there it sort of ends. Similarly, with this college funding issue, the colleges could simply say, you know, Trump administration, you're right. We've been asleep at the switch. Muhammad Khalil, you're expelled. All your followers are expelled. You're banned from campus. We're happy for you to be deported. Good riddance. And they could get every penny of the money they've been getting. That's literally how easy it would be. But what they're actually doing is holding their federal funding hostage to their support for Hamas and anti-Semitism. Because as we established, it's not free speech, because you can't say, hey, honey, that's a nice dress on a college campus. So we see a parallel between the actions of Hamas and the actions of college administrators, even in this. How do you think this is going to end up?
Well, that I don't know. You know, if Harvard wants to, you know, have its campus be free for anti-Semites to do what they want to do, then they can do that and they won't get the federal funds. That's all. But, you know, there's no obligation on the part of the government to have to give a university like that that's not going to protect certain people on their campus. If you're not, you know, if you're not going to protect them, you're not going to get the money.
So you see this as a civil rights issue?
Well, yes, certainly for the Jewish students. Yes, their rights are definitely being infringed. Nobody should have to, in order to get an education, put up with being discriminated against in such ways. It would be very obvious if this kind of discrimination were occurring against any Black students, gay students, women. I mean, nobody would have a problem understanding it. But if they're doing it against Jews, all of a sudden, well, gee, I don't know, is that really discrimination? All of a sudden, they can't see that attacking Jews, screaming at them, telling them we hate them, saying it's okay to kill them, all of a sudden that becomes acceptable.
And what's interesting is the Civil Rights Act of 1964 specifically protects religion as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it's in what they call black letter law.
Hmm.
So
yeah.
You don't see any of that making any difference. I saw just on X that Harvard is suing now, saying the government has no right to cut funding for any reason. So that they had a contract and it has to be funded. So that's going to be their position.
Yeah. Well, that's why, and that is why the Jewish leaders and organizations and the Jewish people at the grassroots need to look at that and say, why is Harvard fighting this so hard? Okay, see, this is what our Jewish leaders are not doing. They are not saying to the people, we need to think about this. Why is Harvard fighting this so hard? What is Harvard trying to defend here? Its right to normalize anti-Jewish bigotry on its campus. Okay, that's what you need to be thinking about. You do not need to be thinking about poor Muhammad Khalil might get deported. Okay, he broke the law. And for that reason alone, the government has the right to deport him. So why are these 10 Jewish organizations wasting our time with this kind of nonsense when much more important issues are facing the Jewish world today?
Well, thank you. I think that about sums it up. And I think this would be a good time to sort of wrap up our conversation. And
Okay.
I think it was very stimulating. We'll see if we get any viral distribution or not. And
it's always fun to talk with you, Larry.
Okay, thank you. And until next time, Shalom.
Shalom. Shalom.